and welcome to the Passenger Seat Podcast, a podcast designed to fill your passenger seat with chat about classic cars, all recorded from my 1968 Morris Minor Peggy. I'm Becca, and today we're doing part 2 of the FBHVC's Club Expo presentations and going through some of the information. In the first part that came out a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the fact that they are looking to get their UNESCO Intangible Heritage recognition for classic cars and classic vehicles and historic vehicles in terms of what happens around them. We talked about some of the stuff that's happening around fuel. We talked about some of the stuff that's happening around keeping these clubs afloat and membership numbers and things like that. This is the second part, and we're looking at some of the stuff that was covered in the afternoon session. Now, what is consistently an ongoing discussion for many car clubs is obviously how to get young people involved. They had various different talks on this topic in the afternoon. Firstly, they had Borrow a Classic come up, who are a fantastic charity, I guess. Yeah, a charity that work to pair people up with people's spare classic vehicles or clubs' spare classic vehicles, give them a year of trialing ownership where they only have to pay for kind of ongoing little bits of maintenance that's often supported by the club, and also their insurance, but they get to experience the ownership of a classic vehicle for a year and hopefully fall in love with it. And I'm really hoping that in the next few weeks we will get the guys from Borrow a Classic on to have a bit of a talk, because they've got a fantastic success story amongst them that I really want to make sure is shared far and wide, so that people realise what a fantastic scheme this is, but also so that more people realise potentially that they are eligible for it. So these came up, and a lot of the people that are involved in it now, it was set up by Bob Wilkinson. He's trying to step back a little bit now, and a lot of the people that are involved in it have in some way been young people in the scene that have been helped or supported by clubs, or had to battle potentially their way through clubs to get young people better circumstances in these clubs. And first up, they had Matt Coles on, who, if you are involved in Morris Minors, you will know was one of the original setter-uppers of the Morris Minor Young Members Register. And he highlighted the importance of focusing on community, not only to get them to buy a car, but also to stay. Make them feel welcome. Don't push them into pointing out faults and things like that with their cars. That car is probably something they're incredibly proud of purchasing. Please don't, at their first event, start telling them what's wrong with it unless they've asked for it. Just make them feel welcome, make them feel like their car is welcome, and ask how you can help them. Ask what they need to keep them motoring, and cater your events that they are coming to a mix of backgrounds. Yes, some people still enjoy sitting behind a classic car, having a picnic and sitting in hopefully glorious sunshine, unlike today. Whereas other people might be more looking for the opportunity to get out and enjoy their cars. And I think that is something that a lot of clubs have started to pick up on. The Morris Minor Owners Club have that element of you being able to sit behind your car, but they have road runs, they have gymkhanas and things like that going on as well. So there's a mix of things going on so that people can hopefully stay engaged regardless of their interest. Borrow a Classic were highlighting the brilliance of their scheme by noting that kind of 2 people who borrowed cars are now on club committees. That isn't necessarily always going to happen. Like I said in the last podcast, like I've said loads of times, often club committee positions are too onerous for young people who have so much going on at the moment, and therefore we might have to cater some of those positions to being more suitable to people across the age spectrum who have more responsibilities than previously. But there is an element of success, and there was a fantastic success story of Josh, who I'm hoping to get on to the podcast soon to talk about his experience of Borough Classic. But it goes to show that that scheme is really useful, is really interesting, and can offer a lot to clubs if they get involved in terms of getting young people through. But an element of, please make sure that the way that you are introducing these young people into the system is welcoming and not detrimental to their enjoyment of the vehicles. Taking those next steps was presented by Alan Abbey, who I believe was from the Midget and Sprite Club, who have a really thriving young members section as well. And he'd been kind of looking at the car clubs and progressing car clubs in a way that he would look at that in his previous work setting. And he'd started by trying to encourage everyone in the room to think of themselves as vehicle enthusiasts rather than petrol heads. It's a broader term that he felt was more reflective of the younger generation, and I kind of have to agree in that regard. It is something that I think more young people are seeing. They're not just petrol heads, because some of us enjoy diesel, but also some of us enjoy steam and pedal power and all sorts of things, and EVs. There's a lot of interesting EV stuff going on now, and being more reflective of that changing thing, looking at how terms and phrases are used within car clubs, is definitely something that a lot of car clubs can look on and reflect on to be more welcoming spaces. The FBHVC obviously recognise the importance of training and support, hence why that is the expo exists. And having that ongoing support and not working in isolation is something that Alan pointed out would probably be really important in the coming years of keeping these car clubs going and seeing that more cross-working with lots of clubs. We had a brief kind of information about Car Club Fest, and that's a great example, by the sounds of it, of car clubs coming together to keep things going and keep interesting stuff happening for their members, which is fantastic to see. And I think Alan is correct in the fact that there will be a lot more of that happening. Many clubs like the Midget and Sprite and the Morris Minor Owners Club have been trying to encourage young people through apprenticeship awards. The Midget and Sprite do the Most Improved Apprenticeship, which involves winning a £300 cheque, a trophy, but also what I think is really important is membership of the club. Because like we've said before, if you've got that membership, you're potentially more likely to keep it going, and it gets somebody aware of what is going on in that club. So finding ways that you can gift membership to appreciative young people who are actually going to give back to the scene is a fantastic thing to do. Gift membership to your people that are going on Borough Classic, gift membership to apprenticeships who are working really hard on keeping various vehicles on the road, and having a big discussion about those sorts of things, I think is a fantastic thing for clubs if they have the financial viability to do. Then he raised kind of lots of discussion about how young members exist within clubs, how many clubs have young members sections, what was the age range, how do they differ, what is the benefits that you get for being a young person, do you get reduced membership, how is that a fair reflection of what the young people might need, potentially corporate benefits that clubs could be getting for having that young member engagement, really reflecting on what it is those young people need. They don't, like Matt Cole said, necessarily need young people turning up to events and being told how their car is wrong and what needs to be done to it immediately, but what they actually need in terms of good parts availability, good quality parts, clubs looking into potentially manufacturing good quality parts so that the young people that are dailying these vehicles, because it's the only vehicle, they can only afford to have one vehicle, so it's their only vehicle, having those good quality remanufactured parts is incredibly important to keeping these young people engaged and using these vehicles. And so using club funds to do that is beneficial to all members, but particularly those young people. Lots of other discussion about what those young people specifically need and engage with, like what events look like, how they come along to events, the distances that they're willing to travel, all of those sorts of things. And more coordination potentially between clubs, having young members join up forces, and having special sections at Car Club Fest at the NEC. All interesting topics and thoughts for, I think, a lot of the people that were in the room to start having. What I do know is that young members have been a topic, and getting young people in has been a topic at this expo for years. I know that years ago Matt Coles and Andy Wilson went along and did a presentation about young people and the young members section in the Morris Minor Owners Club that they'd set up. It's an ongoing thing. It isn't an easy fix, but there could be an element of some clubs going, well, it's not an easy fix, so we're not going to do anything actively to do about it, and not thinking creatively, not thinking interestingly, and just hoping that someone comes along and does it for them. A lot of clubs have potentially got lucky in that regard, in the fact that a young person has come along, shown them what needs to be done, and done it. But not all clubs are going to be like that, and some are going to need to start stepping up and doing more of that sort of thing. And there was a discussion briefly about the idea of an FBHVC Young Driver event, building on an Alvis event that was talked about by some Alvis members in the audience, and how tricky it is to put those sorts of events on. So the opportunity for young people to get behind the wheel and experience a vehicle, but the insurance, the access and things like that is potentially not something that a lot of clubs have, but is hugely useful to putting a smile on these people's faces, getting them that experience, and having, as I've discussed before, this manufactured nostalgia for cars that otherwise they would have no connection to. So that was kind of the big young member discussion that was had throughout the event, and I think it's good that these are happening and they're continuing to happen, but seeing more creative ideas about it is something I think we can all agree more of these events need to build on. Finally, one of the last things that was kind of discussed is the FBHVC's relationship with the DVLA. Obviously, that's a really important thing for us to have, because the DVLA, particularly for those of us who are road-going vehicle owners, are the ones that are making the legislations about modifications. They're the ones that are making the legislations about how we can use our cars and things like that. And the last 5 years, from what was presented, has been a tricky time for that relationship between the FBHVC and the DVLA. They set up, the DVLA set up what they were calling user groups. So these were particular groups of people who had specific needs within vehicle usage. So these might be potentially disabled users, or users of certain types of vehicles, and the FBHVC kind of lobbied for a historic vehicle user group that they were part of, and the initial meetings seemed promising. They had pretty good communication, but over the years that communication started to deteriorate, and I think the quote that was put forward by this presentation was that the DVLA management attended but gave every impression of not really listening to the concerns that were being brought forward by the FBHVC, which is obviously concerning for those of us that were relying on that relationship to protect our vehicles. The FBHVC obviously continued lobbying, continued working as best they could, but were working against what sounded like a very difficult management, but there was a change in staffing, and this started to improve things as far as they were concerned. And obviously we saw that call for evidence a little while back, which had an unprecedented number of responses. We saw 15,000 people respond to that call for evidence from the DVLA that was going around, I think maybe about this time last year, maybe December of 2024. And the last call for evidence that was done by a similar body had 50 responses. So 15,000 versus 50 really showed just how keen and engaged a lot of these people were with this call for evidence. And that resulted in further progress on the registration processes that they were fighting to preserve and improve. They saw policy revisions being presented to them in August 2025. And in October of 2025, a new DVLA CEO, Tim Moss, was put into position, and the DVLA have introduced the FBHVC to Tim Moss, and they believe that there is a good working relationship and constructive meeting happening, and that when they had that meeting with Tim, there was a presentation of the survey that had happened last year for the FBHVC, which they believe is quite constructive. He took that on board, and they're hoping that that continues to be a growing and improving relationship. And in December 2025, they saw themselves being brought back into, once again, a constructive historic vehicle user group discussion, and being presented with information regarding a confidential future announcement around changes to various different aspects of registration, vehicle usage, and all of that stuff. And overall, whilst they can't tell us exactly what that is at the moment, they are very happy with that result. And so it's good to see that that relationship with the DVLA, who are clearly a very important body for us to all continue enjoying this hobby, is on the mend, is doing positive things for us going forward, and that we've hopefully got some useful and constructive progress happening in the near future. So that's my summary of kind of the second half of the FBHVC Expo. There was other stuff going on kind of out in the kind of concourse area, like presentations from Lavenham Press, who are also interestingly doing things like spares distribution for clubs now, which I think is a fantastic thing to see being done, because so many clubs are struggling with spares access, and I think it will be really important for keeping these cars and these clubs going, but it is often a very onerous task. So fantastic to see that happening. Lots of other useful things, obviously the opportunity to buy your Drive It Day plaque, which I engaged in, and it's a useful and really good thing to see happening. I was really privileged to go along, and I'm hoping that I'll get to go along to future ones in future, because it's really interesting to see all of this information firsthand, and really keen to continue to support what the FBHVC do to help us keep motoring. And on that note, I hope you've enjoyed this second part, and in the meantime, drive safely and happy motoring.